NHRA, the world's largest motorsport sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship drag racing from the NHRA. The foundation of the $18 million NHRA Winston Drag Racing Series is 19 separate races across the United States and Canada. The most recent event was in the Deep South at State Capitol Dragway near Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the 14th annual running of the Citgo Cajun Nationals. The last two cars in Top Fuel, Gene Snow and Frank Hawley, came to the starting line prepared for a race that fans anticipated to be record-setting. Snow, the first NHRA driver ever in the 4-second range, had regained his performance, and the former two-time Winston Funny Car champion Frank Hawley was back in form. But a broken supercharger drive pulley brought an end to Hawley's race, and Snow blasted a 5.16-second elapsed time at over 268 miles an hour to take his first win since the 1988 Grand National. Funny car competition throughout 1989 has seen a different winner at each of the 5 previous events. The Cajun Nationals saw the first repeat winner as Mike Dunn followed his victory at the AC Delco Southern Nationals with the domination of the Baton Rouge funny car field. In the final round, John Martin came to the starting line to face him, but with a wounded race car. Martin's crew proved unable to repair all the engine damage suffered in his semifinal victory. Dunn won handily with a 5.63-second run at over 254 miles an hour. In Pro Stock, for only the second time this Winston drag racing season, someone other than Bob Glidden was in the winner's circle at race end. The Winston champ and current points leader Glidden went out in the first round. Bruce Allen parlayed some strong times on the track and outstanding reaction times at the start to take his second Cajun Nationals title in a row. He and the 1987 event champion Butch Leal squared off in the finals with Allen ahead at the finish, a time of 7.45 seconds at over 184 miles an hour. Now the racing focus shifts to Mid-Ohio and the celebration of the 25th annual running of the Budweiser Springnationals. A huge crowd is jammed into National Trail Raceway near Columbus, Ohio, with this 25th annual running of the Budweiser Springnationals. Hello, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and since we were here 1 year ago, there has been an increased use of computer recording devices on these cars and driver aids such as timing devices. All of this has resulted in a very complex sport and definitely increased performance. We've seen that here at the Spring Nationals. And for more on that story, here's my good friend Steve Evans.
David, I find it fascinating that in this age of highly technical race cars, well, like Kenny Bernstein's machine, the only funny car to win 2 NHRA national events so far this season is this car driven by Mike Dunn. And everything on the machine is driver controlled. It has no onboard computer. The only Nitro funny car that does it. Mike does it all. The braking, the shifting, actuating the clutch. Mike Dunn is one fine race car driver. In fact, in round number 1, even though the engine broke a push rod right off the line and burned up down the racetrack, he did beat John Martin, the same guy he robbed of the Cajun Nationals title just a few weeks ago. They've installed a fresh power plant. All they have to do now is snap on the body and head for the staging lanes for round number 2. But conversely, on this technical thing, the most advanced car, maybe in Top Fuel, Gary Ormsby's machine, who has won 3 races this year, continues to lead the pack. In fact, here, National Trail's first ever 4-second elapsed time came in qualifying from Gary Ormsby of 4:99. Ormsby continued his success earlier in round number 1 today when he ran a stunning 5:03 against Rudy Toepke on a racetrack and in weather conditions not nearly as ideal as yesterday when he clocked that 4:99. In fact, right now it is time for round number 2 of Top Fuel. David?
Steve, sitting and waiting for the word to start the engine is Hank Endres, a 51-year-old veteran of this sport of championship drag racing. He's driving the car of Jeff and Susan Bernstein. No relation to the four-time Winston Funny Car champion, Kenny Bernstein. His competition, another veteran of the Top Fuel Wars, Gene Snow.
We saw the perspiration in the window of the helmet of Hank Endres. I'm sure the same is true of Gene Snow, as we have really a sun-drenched racetrack today. Unlike yesterday, when the sun never came out, it was so cool, the air was so good. Gary Ormsby ran that track record, 499. We have a whole different set of circumstances today.
And the racetrack itself is different today. We have seen cars lose traction in the first round of competition that yesterday had no problems whatsoever. And this story of track conditions will continue throughout the day. Gene Snow defeated Chris Karamazines in the first round.
And to give you some idea of how competitive qualifying was, this man, Hank Endres, qualified at 5:19, was only 14th in the field. Earlier today, he squared off with Connie Collada, who qualified number 8 at 5.10. But watch the car in the near lane. This was Hank Endres.
In this first round race, Hank Endres built a big lead over Colletta when Connie had problems. Then it was engine problems for Hank Endres, necessitating a tremendous amount of work by the Jeff and Susan Bernstein crew.
Well, here's what happens when you burn pistons in these nitromethane fuel motors. It pumps all the oil out of the exhaust, all over the engine. The entire thing must be disassembled and many parts replaced in a short amount of time.
Steve, the pace at which these crews operate is absolutely incredible. When you have problems, you don't get any extra time to work on the car, so you got to work that much faster and still be very precise to put together a 4,000 horsepower race engine. Gene Snow is in the far lane. Hank Endres in the near lane.
The Endres car, a relatively new machine, still not totally proven. Gene Snow, on the other hand, he won the very last race on the circuit, the Cajun Nationals in Baton Rouge.
Both drivers are now set, awaiting the green light. And Gene Snow smokes the tires at the starting line. Hank Endres advances into the semi-finals. All that hard work by the crew obviously paying off. An elapsed time of 5.22 seconds of speed over 271 miles an hour. Very respectable here in the heat of the day. Meanwhile, back in the funny car pit area, two longtime heroes, Don Garlitz and Roland Leong, standing by conversing, while the crew has to move them out of the way to do the work on Jim White's funny car to get that vehicle ready for round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator coming up a little bit later in the program. Now let's go to the far end of the racetrack and Steve Evans.
Hank Endres enjoying one of his better days at the races in a long time semi-final bound, Hank.
Don't you love it? Don't you love it? We did good. We hurt the motor last pass, and we changed the fuel pumps and changed the blower, and it seems to respond real good.
Very conservative 522. Maybe all this track will hold.
It's not looking real good. This thing spun in the middle, you know, the race course. So.
You can feel it moving around?
Yeah. So we changed the clutch a little bit. And,
well, it looks pretty healthy.
I don't know you know who we have next round?
Take them one at a time, Hank. It doesn't matter.
But Ormsby, we got to make a big change, right?
Ormsby's got them all talking. That's right.
Hank Endres obviously happy with the performance thus far and looking forward to the semifinals. The 1989 NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals is being brought to you by Budweiser. For all you do, this Bud's for you. And by Firestone. Watch us. We're on the move. And by Fram Bendix Auto Life. All quality products of Allied Automotive. Tom Hoover looking over the work, progressing on his funny car. He faces Mark Oswald in round number 2 of funny car. Later at the Spring Nationals.
Here we see the crew of funny car star Mark Oswald getting his funny car ready for round 2 action coming up later on. I'm Steve Evans along with Dave McClellan, and we're at the NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals at National Trail Raceway in Central Ohio. Right now, Top Fuel round number 2 continues, and here's the local boy, David.
His name is Jim Head, and he has had quite a career in this sport, coming up from the Sportsman ranks, advancing into the nitro-burning funny car category. Jim Head won himself 3 national event titles, including a U.S. Nationals crown. His competition here in Top Fuel is the 1987 Winston champion, Dick LaHaye.
And Dick LaHaye can tell you that winning that championship certainly is a thrill and worth a lot of money, but sometimes can be a bit of a jinx. The top fuel drivers historically have had a hard time repeating. Joe Amato, the '88 champion, struggling this season. But Dick LaHaye is back on track. Witness his Southern Nationals victory just a few weeks ago. Qualified here in the number 8 spot at a nice 5:10.
Jim Head qualified 12th with a 5:16 and defeated a tire-smoking Frank Cook, who fell prey and victim to the tire-smoking problems in round number 1.
Jim Head had a quicker elapsed time in the first round than did Dick LaHaye. So that has given Jim Head the lane choice, and he has taken the near lane, as you can see, and that has been the favorite so far among drivers that have had that option.
Steve, that lane choice may be an all-important factor throughout this entire race, as this racetrack with the sun bearing down on it changes, it seems, from run to run. And look, Dick LaHaye goes up in smoke. Now Jim Head smokes the tires, but he's not about ready to lift. Jim Head threads his way down this quarter-mile racetrack to a 5.51 second elapsed time. His speed, 264 miles an hour, and he advances into the semifinals. For the far lane of the racetrack, second race, same story. Gene Snow smoked the tires. Dick LaHaye did the same. Back in the funny car pit area for Mike Dunn, it's a bit of a family break in all the action. That's his daughter Samantha autographing a t-shirt. There's not only a tremendous amount of families involved in this sport as competitors, there's a huge number of families here as the largest crowd ever to attend a Spring Nationals at National Trail Raceways on hand. Let's go down to the far end once again. And Steve.
Hometown boy or not, it pays to stay with it no matter what happens with the tires and the traction.
Yeah, we weren't smoking the tires quite as bad as Dick was, so...
You actually saw him?
No, I saw him go away, and I knew he was smoking the tires bad, and then mine started to go away, and we've been working on this technique of trying to drive this race car when it's smoking the tires.
Right, now let's take a look, if we can, down inside the cockpit. There's a cylinder attached to the brake handle. Usually the brake is held by that cylinder and releases when you hit the throttle. What are you doing today?
Today I'm doing nothing. We do a couple different things with that cylinder, but today I'm doing it manually. I feel more comfortable. I don't know where it's going to get loose at this particular racetrack, and so I'm just relying on the seat of the pants method and touching it a little bit with my right hand as I go down the racetrack.
Great job.
Thank you.
An engineer by trade, Jim Head's cars are always just a little bit different by design. Back in the funny car pit area, this is Bruce Larson's pit. They're getting set for their second round race against Johnny West. We're back in National Trail Raceway near Columbus, Ohio, and the 25th annual Budweiser Spring Nationals. This is Lori Johns, 23 years old, out of Corpus Christi, Texas. Her competition, the reigning Winston champ, Joe Amato.
Well, Lori Johns here, uniquely enough, has lane choice over the reigning champ. She ran quicker in round number 1, and she has selected the near lane, and that's no surprise if you've been watching the action.
With the tire smoking problems suffered by the 2 previous cars in that far lane of the track, Joe Amato, with his wife Jerry directing him back into his tracks, has got a monumental task ahead of him. Lori Johns broke onto the top fuel scene at the latter part of last season, and while she has yet to win her first national event title, she has qualified well at practically every race.
Joe Amato is one of the finest drivers to ever strap himself into one of these steel cocoons. He has won 14 NHRA national events and wears the big number 1 on his wing. But earlier, in fact yesterday in qualifying, this was Amato in the right-hand lane, a ball of fire and paces.
With the engine behind Amato, Joe had no idea that the problem was as severe as it was. Finally, the oil got under the tires and he was forced to shut it off. The problems began the moment he hit the throttle and left the starting line. Steve had a chance to talk with him afterward.
Joe, it's been a long, long time since we've seen you have big-time engine problems like you did here in qualifying.
That's the first time, Steve, in 3 years that we've broken a rod on the engine. A push rod broke, actually, and it let the engine hydraulic and it blew the rod out of it.
Hydraulic meaning?
It filled up with nitro, and it tried to compress a solid, and it won't do it.
It can be even worse than you experienced.
Yeah, ours was a minor one. The motor is probably repairable, and the heads are good and all, so it could have been a lot worse.
Amato and his crew, headed by Tim Richards, put a brand new engine in for today's elimination. But in the first round, when they beat Pat Dakin, they ran a tire-smoking 552. This combination has yet to be sorely tested.
A lot of question marks. Amato far lane. Laurie Johns there. Amato is late, Dave.
Very late, Steve. And Laurie Johns has problems. But look, no tire smoke for Amato. And look at the time. 5.08 seconds. 284 miles an hour. Now that crew has the combination together on the TRW special of Amato.
Well, Dave, that is a back-breaking elapsed time. 5:08, the second quickest we have seen today. Gary Ormsby ran quicker in round one at a 5:03, but it was a little bit cooler then. And speaking of Ormsby, look at this. He's in the next pair. He has lane choice. He is changing his mind and going into Amato's tracks. Can you blame him?
Not at all, Steve. Once you see that quick elapsed time come up, you want to be on that same lane of the racetrack. And the #1 qualified car, Gary Ormsby, with that 4.99 in qualifying, moved over into the far lane. That puts Dennis Forssell, with his crew chief Larry Frazier nearest the camera, into the near lane of the racetrack. Now let's go to Steve at the far end.
Well, Joe, you had a little bit of luck in round #1, winning even though you smoked the tires. Here you didn't need any luck. Tim Richards gave you a 5:08 out of this girl.
5:08 on this track, Steve. That's pretty impressive in this heat. You know, it's the car's had the horsepower all weekend, but just it's a tricky track, just trying to get it down there. You know, my guys have been working hard, and we've got that world championship monkey on our back. We're trying to shake it, buddy.
You got behind a little bit when you blew that motor in qualifying. That always hurts. Set you back a bit.
Yeah, you always come out with a new motor, and it's just hard to get down the track, you know, and then everybody's smoking the tires, you know. The crew has to do a good job. That's why you need Tim Richards and the guys.
This one makes you smile.
Yeah, you got to be smiling. It's been tough lately.
Probably one of the biggest reasons it's been tough on the reigning champion Joe Amato is this man, Gary Ormsby, winner of 3 out of 6 national event titles thus far this season, and a commanding lead at this point in the championship points chase.
Gary Ormsby's car has had all the competitors talking, Dave, as you know. Not because of the wins that he's accomplished, because of the incredibly quick elapsed times the car and driver have been able to put together. In fact, NHRA had a private look at the car with Ormsby and crew chief Lee Beard's cooperation. They declared the car absolutely legal. That's all they would say. But now they have passed a new rule going into this event: no attachments to the throttle pedal. Has Gary Ormsby had a trick they have taken away from him? Maybe we'll find out today.
Ormsby's competition here in round #2 of Top Fuel is Dennis Forssell. In his first round race, he was matched against Darrell Gwynn, the winner of 6 national events last season.
And, Dave, the Gator Nationals in Florida this year. Now, this was earlier today, round 1. Keep your eyes on the Coors Extra Gold Special in the near lane. That is Darrell Gwynn. We've talked about how tricky this racetrack has been. Well, Mr. Gwynn found out firsthand he smoked the tires and almost took it too far.
Steve, he almost lost it and put it into the guardrail. Dennis Forssell, the Simpatico Special, advanced to round #2 with that 5:29.
Well, Dave, as you well know, when you're seriously gunning for the season-end championship, a first-round loss can be just devastating. Darrell, sorry to see you out.
Well, you know, that's right, Steve. And especially when you pull the starting line, just about knowing you're going to smoke the tires when you see just about every car smoking the tires.
We're not dealing with the same racetrack. We didn't qualify.
Not at all. And, you know, when pulling to the starting line and trying to cut a good light and trying to do everything right, knowing that you're going to have to pedal the car going down the racetrack is it's a day's work in 5 seconds.
You gave it your best.
Well, thank you. We'll be back.
It's certainly been a day's work for Dennis Forssell thus far. In the first round, he met up against the man that is currently #2 in the points chase. Now here in the second round, he's racing the points leader. Tough competition here at the Spring Nationals. Ormsby in the far lane, Dennis Forssell in the near lane. And Forssell smokes the tires. Ormsby in the Castrol GTX car travels down the racetrack in the same lane, just yielded a 5:08, but 400ths of a second slower. A 5:12 for Ormsby at 284 miles an hour, and that sets up our semifinals. And look, Joe Amato will race Gary Ormsby, and that 5:08 earned him the choice of lanes. Hank Endres goes against Jim Head. Endres will be able to select the lane he wants to race in the semifinals. Round #2 of funny car competition is coming up next. This is Tom Hoover moving into the staging lanes for his match against Mark Oswald. Steve?
Well, Gary, you've enjoyed nothing but good news this entire Spring Nationals. The 4-second run, the 5:03 in the first round. I got a little bit of bad news. You lost lane choice with a 5:12 next round to Amato.
Well, we slowed it up a little bit, Tab. We were worried considerably about this lane. As you saw, might have noticed, we did switch lanes over there when we saw a couple of cars get down it, but we did take a lot of power out of this car for that run, so might have to put it back in for the next one.
It is the talk of the pits. Gary Ormsby's top field dragster, winner of 3 out of 6 races this year.
Steve, the car may be the talk of the pit, but the grandstands are reacting to the race between Ormsby and Amato coming up in a bit in the semifinals of Top Fuel. Back in the pro stock pit areas, Joe Lapone Jr. working on his Chevy Beretta, getting it ready for round number 2 of pro stock at the Spring Nationals.
Fuel pit area of Jim Head. They're not concerned here about making more power. What they want is to take the power they've got and put it to the ground when they face Hank Idris, who has almost 0.3 of a second on the hometown hero. Right now it is time, though, for the second round of the nitro-burning full-bodied cars they call funny cars.
Our first pair of cars, Steve's, finds the points leader, Bruce Larson, in the far lane of the racetrack with the Sentry Tack Engages Oldsmobile. His competition is the brand new Chevy Beretta-bodied car of Johnny West. As you may remember, Johnny West was the driver last season for the Hawaiian Roland Leon. But over the winter, he built this new car and came out with his whole new racing operation that is his own at the start of this season.
But what a story Bruce Larson has been. After nearly 30 years of drag racing on many different levels, finally at the age of 51, he makes his mark. He won the Winter Nationals, the season opening race out in Pomona, California, was runner-up at the Gator Nationals when he crossed the center line when he had the race won over tire-smoking Ed McCullough. Larson has got the big guns nervous. And here he's up against a man you don't shake very easily. Johnny West built his own car with his own hands. Body, interior, everything, Dave.
Bruce Larson qualified number 2 at this race with a 5.30 second elapsed time. And in the first round, he raced against Art Hendy, the team of Hendy and Worsham out of San Bernardino, California. And Steve probably put down one of the most impressive runs of this race, including the 499 by Ormsby.
Absolutely. Ormsby's 499 was done in perfect conditions. As you've already learned, today is not like yesterday, but this was earlier today. In the far lane was Bruce Larson just running away from Art Hendy to a new NHRA national record, 5:25.
What impressive performance came from Bruce Larson in round number 1. Steve talked with him.
This racetrack in round 1 has intimidated a lot of drivers, but not Bruce Larson. A brand new national record of 5:25.
All right, great. We were kind of scared because there were a lot of cars smoking the tires out there in the middle, and I was ready to just feather the throttle and pull the brake and try to make it down the track, and it hooked up.
So you didn't have to do anything other than just drive it?
I didn't have to do a thing.
You know, they are still doing the book work. You may have a backup in qualifying. Your 5:30 may back that up. I'm sure Dave will find out for us. If it does, that's 200 points.
That's great. We can use them right now. We want to spread that thing out, spread that lead out real big.
Okay. Great job.
Thanks, Steve.
The record holder. How about it? Dave, you got the information yet on that backup?
Steve, immediately after that, we were happy to report that the 5.30 set in qualifying by Bruce Larson was within the required 1% of the backup for the national record. So at 5.25 seconds, he earns himself 200 bonus points.
And don't you know, Johnny West is aware he's against the quickest of the quick, and he overpowers the near lane.
As so many other racers have done, West goes up in smoke, but Larson continues to dominate this National Trail quarter mile. 5.35 seconds. His speed, 276 miles an hour. A very safe run for the points leader.
And with our next pair fired and ready here in round 2 of funny car competition, you can bet the driver with lane choice, or maybe you can't bet on that. Mark Oswald has lane choice, and he is allowing Tom Hoover into that far lane. What do you think, Mac?
Steve, I think that Mark Oswald and his crew chief, Leonard Hughes, is depending on that near lane being as good as it was in round number 1 when he ran 5:32 to defeat Frank Kramberger. And a problem has set in for Mark Oswald. The smoke coming out from under the car, and you can see a track of moisture going down behind the Motorcraft Pro. And look at the oil on the racetrack. There has been some serious engine damage. They're pulling him off to the side to get the oil out of the center of the lane.
Well, Mark Oswald had absolutely no idea of what was happening there, Dave. He probably still had oil pressure on his gauge. He was backing up until he got the cut sign. Not Mark's fault that oil's out there.
The track of oil coming out of the water box in the burnout area down track, and that will mean an end of the racing day for Mark Oswald and the Candies and Hughes Ford Pro. For Tom Hoover and the Champion Auto Stores Showtime Pontiac, he gets a big break. He also got a big break in round number 1 when he raced Don Prudhomme, the number 1 qualifier, with a 5:27. Prudhomme in the far lane with the Skoal Bandit Pontiac had serious engine problems and gave a big break to Hoover, who advanced to round number 2. A brave Steve talked with Don Prudhomme.
Well, brakes don't get much tougher than the one that just hit the low qualifier in funny car Don Prudhomme. Oil into the tires, a broken engine, everything went bad.
Yeah, all in one run. Yeah, I just, you know, what can I tell you? You know, everybody tried real hard. The crew did a good job. It's just one of those things. That's drag racing.
Just a parts failure.
Yeah. Well, they kicked the tires loose, and
which came first, the oil or the tires?
The tires blew loose first, and then it, I don't know, threw a rod out of it for some reason. We're not sure why. It's disappointing. You know, we felt like we had things going our way.
Well, sooner or later you'll get them, Snick.
Thank you.
And obviously disappointed Don Prudhomme looking at the damage. Hoover with a bye run now in round number 2, the second big break for Tom Hoover. Mark Oswald climbing out of his Ford Pro. He's headed back into the staging lanes, and certainly he is disappointed.
Well, if I was Hoover, Dave, he clicks it off to save the parts. I think I'd just keep driving right to Atlantic City and put everything on the pass line the way his day's going.
One lucky day for Tom Hoover. This advances him now into the semi-finals of Funny Car Eliminator. He obviously is foregoing lane choice by virtue of his 12-second elapsed time. But Hoover, at the rate his luck is holding out, doesn't really care whether he has lane choice. Back in the top fuel pit area, this is one group that is very happy to have the choice of lanes. This is Joe Amato's group. They're getting his mount ready for the race against Gary Ormsby, coming up later at the Budweiser Spring Nationals.
Everyone to National Trail Raceway. I'm Steve Evans along with Dave McClellan. And watching today's action, are you bitten maybe just a little bit by the drag racing bug that you think, boy, is that expensive stuff? Well, you bet it is. At this level, the pros, especially if, like Don Prudhomme, you blow a great big hole in the side of your engine in round number 1. But don't think that you can't race on the most modest of budgets. All you have to do is check out any week's NHRA's National Dragster. Flip it open to this page, and you'll see there are hundreds of NHRA drag strips all across the U.S. and Canada. And just about all of them run weekly programs. Just fun drag racing, for right off the street cars to budget hot rods you can buy or build yourself. How do you get started? Well, the first thing you ought to do is join NHRA. You'll get National Dragster every week. You'll know what's going on. You'll get an NHRA rule book and lots of other things, including, if you do it right now, a copy of the multi-award-winning home video, Decade of Thrills. So join NHRA, and I'll see you at the drag races. Maybe we'll even talk. David, I hear some rumbling up at the starting line. I'm headed down to the other end.
Steve, that rumbling is nothing more than the 4-time Winston champion, the Budweiser King, Kenny Bernstein. What an action-packed, drama-filled Spring Nationals this has been for Bernstein. He qualified at this event on his last attempt. Qualified well, I might add, with a 5.32-second elapsed time. Here's the latest driver for Roland Leon. This is Jim White at the wheel of the Hawaiian Punch Dodge Daytona. For Kenny Bernstein in his quest for his 5th Winston title, it has not been a terribly successful season. He won his first race just about a month ago.
Talk about a fellow who got a last-second reprieve. Jim White, Tulsa, Oklahoma, did not qualify, but was told by officials this morning he would be in the field as an alternate because of what happened to Tony McCollum of Hayward, California. This was in qualifying. Watch the car in the far lane. That is McCollum. Right at the finish line, kaboom. The blower explodes and literally shreds the fiberglass body.
The further he drove down the racetrack, the more of that car that came apart. The good news, Tony McCollum was uninjured.
Well, Tony, I know to all of us it was a great relief when we saw you get out of that car unhurt.
Yeah, well, she banged one, but it didn't seem all that violent inside of the car. Just a bunch of tin in my face. Outside of that, she was normal.
That's about the most body damage I've ever seen in a funny car from what you say was a rather simple blower explosion. That body is ruined.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it kind of hurts me because as I'm trying to get more confident with the car, it's the second time she blew up in my face. And kind of get fed up with it now.
Can't blame me for that. Hope to see you back.
Thank you.
Steve, I don't know anyone that wouldn't get fed up with engine parts and body parts coming back into their face at over 260 miles an hour. On the starting line, completing their burnout procedure, Kenny Bernstein and Jim White.
And even though he struggled in qualifying, Kenny Bernstein came back in round number 1 this morning and ran a 5:33, almost as good as anybody has done other than Bruce Larson. But let's remember that Jim White in the first round upset John Force. So anything is possible under these conditions on a racetrack like this.
Bernstein just smokes the tires, loses total traction, and crosses the center line. And Jim White advances to the semifinals in this surprise pack Spring National. His elapsed time only 5.70, but it doesn't matter. He got to the finish line first.
A tremendous launch by Kenny Bernstein. You can see the clutch dust coming out of the back. Everything appeared to be balanced until suddenly the tires came loose. And then they got progressively looser. Bernstein dirt tracks it across the cone. That right there would have eliminated him on a center line infraction.
The loss by Kenny, number 2 in the point standing, certainly opens the door for Bruce Larson to further extend his lead in the Winston Championship. Here is the 2-time winner thus far this season, Mike Dunn, the champion at the Cajun Nationals and the Southern Nationals. The competition for Dunn is Chuck Etchell. Let's go to the far end of the racetrack. Steve Evans is with a very fortunate Jim White.
Yesterday afternoon late, you and car owner Roland Leong sat in your pits just totally and completely depressed. You hadn't qualified, and here we are.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's really, it's really fun to do. It's fun. It's terrible to get in the way we got in, obviously, as an alternate, but we feel real fortunate. The car's stumbling and staggering along. We're working on the tune-up, but we think that we've got the right direction to go. We've made some changes. We'll keep making changes. Roland will get this thing figured out. We want to go racing.
Well, you know, you may have the right balance of power for this racetrack as it is right now.
I think so. We talked about it. We talked about hopping the motorway up and putting a lot of clutch on it and try to run 530 with Bernstein, and we said, no, let's don't do it. Let's just do what we're doing. It may be plenty.
Indeed it was. Great job.
Thank you, Steve.
Now there's a man that looks like he is having the greatest day on a racetrack that he's had in a long time. Jim White, he's into the semifinals. Mike Dunn smoked the tires on his second burnout. He is one of the few cars still utilizing a transmission, and Mike Dunn just absolutely fried the tires on his second burnout, indicating a loss of traction. Chuck Etchell's campaigns 2 nitro burners, his own funny car, and a top-fuel dragster driven by Paul Smith.
And Chuck Etchell's in the far lane, David, as you know, had a terrific qualifying effort at 5:39. One of the few funny cars able to get into that 5:30s. Only half the field could do it. Mike Dunn was a bit quicker yet, though, at a 5:36. But that doesn't mean a thing. Qualifying is qualifying. Today is race day, and where there's smoke, there's fire. That was not a good sign off of Dunn's tire.
And that's why it's not. Mike Dunn lost traction immediately. Chuck Etchell's thinking that Dunn may be alongside, keeps his foot in it, and his 6.84-second elapsed time gives credit to the power available in these cars. Imagine you're smoking the tires practically the entire quarter mile, and you still travel in less than 7 seconds.
Mike Dunn was first to smoke the tires, and I think that gave Chuck Etchell's the inspiration, really, to stay with it. He didn't see Dunn, and all he's thinking is get your foot off the gas, try to get back on the gas, let's get to that finish line. He's holding his breath at this point, and as we saw, he did it. Not with spectacular performance, but that's not what matters. Getting the win light is what counts in this sport of drag racing. There are no second chances. So Chuck Etchell's has lost lane choice in a big way to Bruce Larson in the semifinals. A funny car. The other half of the semis line, Tom Hoover against Jim White. Even though he's an alternate, White will have the lane choice. That man is on a roll.
In the Pro Stock pit area, Bob Glidden and family readying the Ford Pro for round number 2 of Pro Stock Eliminator. Grandson Brandon looking on. Crowd in the 25-year history of the Spring Nationals. Some 47,000 people jammed into National Trail Raceway. Let's go to the pits and Steve Evans.
Kenny, have you ever seen a racetrack go from really good to really treacherous just overnight?
No, I haven't, not this drastically, but you know, you had tremendous conditions yesterday. It was cool, cloudy all day, no sun on it. Today it's hot and sunny. Boy, it did change. It really did.
What could you have done in retrospect to not blaze the tires like you did?
Well, we made a little change for that next round. Dale was anticipating getting ready for the third round with Oswald, and that's what you do in these games is look down the line to get ready for lane choices and everything else. And we made a little clutch change, and probably what we should have done, as he said, left it alone, and we would have been just fine. But that's the name of the game. Hindsight's always a lot easier than foresight.
It looked so simple. Going from the starting line to the finish line in a straight line, a quarter of a mile from a standing start. But there's just an insight into the complexities of this sport of championship drag racing.
In our next category, Dave, Pro Scott, well, they're not quite as fast as the nitro funny cars and the fuel dragsters, but it is just as complex, if not more so, to get one successfully 1,320 feet down this racetrack. There is the Trans Am from New Jersey of Frank Iaconio, the Super Shops car, and he is up against the man who won the last national event on the trail, the Cajun Nationals, Bruce Allen and the Levi Garrett Moretta.
Allen qualified in the number 2 position with a fine 7:36 and defeated Ricky Smith in his first round race, while Iaconio came in as the number 6 qualifier and defeated Kenny Delco. It is Pontiac versus Chevrolet. Sophisticated race cars, here's why. They are limited to 2,350 pounds minimum and 500 cubic inches. They run on gasoline and run so well. A big win for Bruce Allen by more than a car length. His time 7.40. His speed 185 miles an hour. Back at the starting line, the next pair getting set. It is 2 Oldsmobiles, the AC Delco car of Warren Johnson, number 2 in the Winston points chase last season against the number 10 car a year ago, the Oldsmobile of Mark Powick.
Powick has really been struggling, Dave, all season long. And here in qualifying, he finally got that car into the 7:40 elapsed time area. And that's an area that this man is very comfortable in, if not the 7:30s. Warren Johnson, Duluth, Georgia. But Mark Powick, well, he had a little bit of a smile when we took that picture. He was really grinning at the end of qualifying with a 7:40. So Powick is in the hunt here for sure.
Powick in the far lane, Johnson in the near lane. These cars run on pumped gasoline through 2 4-barrel carburetors and a planetary gearbox where once they let the clutch out at the starting line, they no longer have to worry about the clutch. You just pull the levers when you're ready to change gears. Warren Johnson losing traction, and Mark Powick moved ahead of him at that point and held the lead across the finish line. 7.48 seconds. His speed 184 miles an hour. Johnson slowing to a 7:66, indicating the loss of traction. In Gary Ormsby's top fuel pit, crew chief Lee Beard replacing the body panel that covers the top half of the front of the car. Back in the rear of the vehicle, the crew putting the engine back together, getting it ready for that all-important race against Joe Amato coming up later in the show. Steve Evans?
David, Mark Powick came around the turn, and inside the car, I could hear him hooting and hollering like a cowboy.
Boy, Steve, I'll tell you, we've been working hard all year, and we've had a tough season this year. I haven't made it past first round, and to be home here and never qualify Columbus first off, and then come out and beat Warren second round, I'm just so elated. I want to thank my crew, and especially Bob DeVore, who we flew in from California to try to help us get straightened out.
And I think a 7:48 will make you medium happy.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. The track's going away, the heat of the day. It's been a lot of oil downs today, and I think that we're in there for the next round.
Okay, pal, see you then.
Thank you.
Mark, we know you're in there for the next round, and the time certainly gives credence to the fact that you found the performance you want. If you think championship drag racing's a young man's sport, take a look at 84-year-old George Hoover, the head of the Hoover family racing operation. The scene hardly changes. The pits are jam-packed with enthused spectators. Steve Evans is there with Mike Dunn.
Well, Mike, we've talked earlier about how you can control your destiny in the cockpit. I thought it might be an advantage on this slick track, but boy, lots of smoke in round 2.
Yeah, well, it didn't really help us here. I just didn't give enough brake. The track wasn't really there, and I should have gave it a little more brake on the starting line. Got a little greedy, and it bit us this time.
Steve, this day at National Trail is turning out to be one of finesse. Mike Dunn didn't quite have the finesse to get his car down the track without smoking the tires. And in Pro Stock, the same rules apply. You saw Warren Johnson a moment ago just absolutely shake the car and lose traction, and he lost the race to Mark Powick. Now we're riding with Bob Glidden as he's backing up after his burnout.
At one time, though, Dave, the Pro Stock car was much more manageable off the starting line than it is now. In fact, they've even gone to slipper clutches in these cars as they near or surpass 1,000 horsepower. From the state of Virginia comes Don Beverly, a one-time NHRA national event winner, against this man who has won 71, I think it is, Bob Glidden from Whiteland, Indiana, the Ford Probe. Now, earlier against this man, Larry Morgan in the Oldsmobile, Glidden had another first-round scare. Remember, he was eliminated round number 1 at the Cajun Nationals. Watch this. The green and white car, far lane, moves first. Glidden has to play catch-up. Moving through the gears, the car moving around in the middle of the racetrack, and yes, but just by inches did Bob Glidden get to the second round, a 7:39.
Glidden qualified in the number 1 spot, a 7.35 second with the Motorcraft Ford Probe. Don Beverly ended up in the number 5 position with a 7:38. That's how close racing has become in Pro Stock Eliminator. The Crown Petroleum Oldsmobile. In the far lane of the track, as we look through Bob Glidden's car, you can see Beverly in the far lane. Beverly moved first.
Beverly is right alongside.
And as Bob Glidden crosses the finish line, he is a car length ahead of Don Beverly, advances into the semifinals. His elapsed time a 7.38 seconds at 185 miles an hour. Beverly had the quicker reaction time and moved first off the starting line, but Glidden outpowered him at the finish.
How about these Oldsmobiles, though, David? They have made tremendous strides in just the last few months. They were having problems qualifying, some of them anyway, like Don Beverly, now running in the 740s a little quicker with every race. How long can Glidden continue to outperform these cars? Well, that time may be coming when they're very close together. Here's another one.
Parity has certainly set into Pro Stock racing. Don Kuntz at the wheel of the Kuntz and Clark Oldsmobile qualified number 8 at a 7:41. Joe Lapone Jr. was the number 4 qualifier. He had a 7:38, and he is one of the most improved drivers and performers in Pro Stock racing with that easy wider Chevy Beretta.
They're staged. The front wheels are in the beams. The engines come up to about 8,500 RPM. They sidestep the clutches, and there's a red light in the near lane.
That is Don Kuntz. Kuntz gave away this race as Joe Lapone advances to the semifinals. The red light indicating Kuntz left the starting line too soon. The performance of Lapone, 7.40. As we watch again, the camera in the center of the racetrack catches the mistake by Don Kuntz. By just thousandths of a second, Don Kuntz left the starting line too early. That gave Joe Lapone the advancement to the semifinals, where he will race Bruce Allen, with Lapone having the choice of lanes. The other pair finds Mark Powick against Bob Glidden, and Glidden will pick the lane. Let's go to Steve.
Ran real well, 740.
Yeah, I'm real happy with that. Obviously, you know, we came from not qualifying in a couple races, and we qualified second to last race and fourth at this race, and I owe it all to my engine builders, who happen to be Bob Ingles and Dennis Warner, and my crew's doing a real good job, and if I can drive, I think we can pull this one out here.
We know you can drive. We've seen that.
Thank you very much.
The Top Fuel semifinals coming up next at the Budweiser Springnationals.
There is nobody having any more fun at this drag race than the man in that white car. Not the 40,000 people in the seats, not you at home or Dave McClellan and I in the booth. That's Hank Andrus. He's in the semifinals at Top Fuel, and he's up against, however, Dave, a man who has this crowd riding with him. Jim Head in the purple and gold Top Fuel dragster.
This man is from Columbus, Ohio. Jim Head. He is making the best showing thus far this season. He has had a trouble-plagued early part of the year. Engine explosions, severe damage to the car. For Andrus, this whole new operation with Rob Flynn, the crew chief. The advisor on this team is Bill Schultz, one of the most respected men in nitro racing.
You heard Jim say earlier he's not using any of the automated systems on this car. He's driving it strictly by feel, releasing that brake when the green light comes on, and then kind of hanging on to it, trying to slow the wheel speed and keep the tires up with the racetrack.
Now both drivers concentrating on getting a good start. The crowd intently watching the starting line at National Trail Raceway. And a tremendous advantage for Hank Endres at the starting line. Jim Head actually ran a quicker elapsed time, a 5.29-second time to the 5:31 for Endres. But the advantage that Endres had when he left the starting line is very difficult to overcome.
You got a feel for Jim Head. Nothing wounds a driver's pride worse than being late. Watch this. Hank Endres does not cut a particularly good light. Something had to have happened inside that cockpit we're unaware of to distract Jim Head. He is just not that late, as a rule.
Here is a close-up view of the leave by Hank Endres. And when we say leave, he left Jim Head sitting on the starting line. Hank Endres advances to his first ever NHRA National Event Final, and now coming into the burnout area is the race of the day in Top Fuel Eliminator. Joe Amato with lane choice is in the far lane of the track. Gary Ormsby nearest the camera. Let's go to the far end. Steve Evans.
If anyone dares to tease Hank Endres about a little gray hair, all you have to do is show him the time slip for this run. Your 5:31 beat Jim Head's 5:29.
Oh, that great, huh? Every once in a while you do a race, Steve.
I think the car owners are going to be real proud of you.
There. We've been leaving good, you know, pretty consistent, and we stepped up. What, did run a 31, you say?
You bet. I think that's all your crew chief Bill Schultz expected it to run, all he was looking for, really.
And try and be consistent and, you know, not overburden the track and not hurt anything. That's important.
How long has it been since Hank Endres has been in a final round of the big NHRA race?
Event? Never.
That's what I thought.
Time. That's 30 years.
Boy, we're going to have some fun now.
Steve, he's already having the time of his life, but a tribute to the tenacity of Hank Endres. Here's Gary Ormsby. This is one of the few times this season that the Castrol GTX car has not had the choice of lanes. As he told Steve Evans a little bit earlier after the second round race, they had backed it down just a bit, maybe a bit too much, and that let Amato slip by and get the lane choice.
Even the racers have come out of the pits to find a place on the fence to watch this one. Two of the best in the world of NHRA Top Fuel racing.
And it is Ormsby going up in smoke. Joe Amato streaks down across the finish line and into the finals with a 5.23-second elapsed time. His speed, 275 miles an hour. And the quest for the Winston points chase tightens considerably with Ormsby going out. Now the reigning champion Amato has a chance to move forward. The quicker reaction time went to Joe Amato as Ormsby just instantly went up in smoke. Down across the finish line, Amato had no difficulty whatsoever earning the right to race Hank Endres in the finals of the Budweiser Springnationals. Now let's go down to the far end of the track and Steve Evans.
Well, against Joe Amato, the car that supposedly never smokes the tires and always leaves first. What is this, yoga?
This is yoga. I said I was going to stand on my head when I beat Ormsby in that green car, and now he's down, buddy.
Well, the green car, as I was about to say, that never smokes the tires and always leaves first. Well, he smoked the tires and didn't leave first. You did.
Well, Steve, I knew it was going to be a close race. Timmy just said, go up there and do your job. After the last light, I didn't get such a good light, but the car's been struggling all weekend, and we've been struggling. You know, if we can win this next race, maybe we can get that World Championship monkey. It's sitting right there looking at me.
Back in the Pro Stock pit area, Mark Howick is thinking about one problem that he confronts in the semis. That's Bob Glidden. Door for everyone. You're looking inside the engine of Bob Glidden. That's about all you're going to get to see. He won't even show us much more. Let's go to Gary Ormsby's pit area and Steve.
Gary, the invincible car has fallen.
Yes, it has, Steve. Kind of surprised us a little bit, but actually we came out of this race unscathed, regardless of who wins it.
Points-wise?
Points-wise. I think we'll move up probably another 400 from where we came in here. We'd definitely wasn't the way we wanted to go out, but it was Joe Amato's birthday. I give him a birthday present.
Well, actually, it's Tuesday, I think. But when you ran that 508, that forced you to maybe look harder at your motor.
It really did. We probably should have left it like we did the round before when we ran the 12, where we softened everything up. But we figured he was going to go for it, and he proved to be the smarter one today because he did not hop his motor up, and we did, and he's in the final round.
Next race is Montreal. You'll be there.
We sure will. Thank you, Steve.
The psychology of top fuel racing as experienced and explained by Gary Ormsby. Bruce Larson on the starting line. He has been the dominant force throughout this event. His competition, the surprising Chuck Etchels. This is the semifinals of Funny Car.
A couple of Northeastern competitors. Bruce Larson, who's a full-time racer and full-time businessman. He's in the lightning management business. You think funny cars are try to manage lightning sometime. And Chuck Etchels, a businessman as well in the printing and engraving field. Now, you saw the body was up briefly on the Bruce Larson car. That's no concern. That's just a routine.
Etchels now following the directions of his crew chief, Paul Smith. Paul wants him to be over on that track just a little bit. Just a few inches could make all the difference in the world in trying to find traction here on the National Trail starting line. Larson, of course, has been able to do that with some success, as credited with the new national record of a 5.25-second elapsed time. A great start for Etchels that goes awry. He goes up in smoke. Larson goes to the finals. His elapsed time, again, very consistent and very safe. 5.33 seconds. His speed over 270 miles an hour. Back at the starting line, our remaining semi-finalists have the engine started and pulling into the burnout area. This is Tom Hoover.
Tom Hoover has had a lot of luck today. Don Perdome broke against him in round number 1, and he's always had a bit of skill to go along with that. Now, the man in the opposite lane, Jim White, Tulsa, Oklahoma, well, he's carrying about a 9-pound rabbit's foot because he didn't even make the cut, and here he goes into the semifinals on the alternate rule.
White, the latest driver in a long series of superstars at the wheel of Roland Leong's Hawaiian Punch Dodge Daytona. At the far end of the track, Steve's with Bruce Larson.
Joe Amato's teammate, Bruce Larson, I don't believe he's going to stand on his head. You never can be too sure. But a beautiful, smooth, conservative 533.
Oh, that's perfect. Just a little better than the last run. I hope we can just hold the consistency for the next round.
You know, by smooth, I mean when the clutch stages came in, the car doesn't jerk. It doesn't try to pick up the front end. It's just hooked.
It feels perfect at this race.
Leave it alone?
Yeah, we're going to leave it alone. Sure.
Maybe enough.
And that may also be one of the wisest decisions made in tuning a race car today. Just leave it alone, particularly when you're running as good as Bruce Larson is. Tom Hoover against Jim White. One of these two drivers will move into the finals and face the mountain that is Bruce Larson.
Absolutely, and I don't look for low ET of the Spring Nationals from either one of them. But as tricky as this event has been so far with the heat and the humidity and the changing conditions, this race could belong to anybody.
This one belongs to Tom Hoover. The Pontiac Firebird moves into the finals with a 5.55-second elapsed time. Based on their performances, Bruce Larson has a huge advantage. But as Steve pointed out, the way the day is going, anybody could win it. The lane choice, of course, will go to Bruce Larson in his final round race against Tom Hoover for the Spring Nationals Funny Car title. The crew on Jeff and Susan Bernstein's car getting it ready for driver Hank Hendricks. He's got to race Joe Amato in the top fuel final in just a bit here at the Spring Nationals.
We're walking with Tom Hoover down here. Dave, they had to hand push the car off of the racetrack. And Hoove, a 555 is really not in the Larson League. What are you going to do?
I tell you, Bruce is having a terrific weekend. His car is the fastest one out here today. 555 was an early shutoff. I had the car very backed off to try and get by the Hawaiian there. I was so afraid of the track smoking the tires. Yesterday, the car ran 543, 240, and we had a little problem, but there's some 30 power there, and we'll see if we can do better and build a little surprise for Bruce and give him our best shot.
Thanks, Doug.
The call is out for the semifinals in Pro Stock. Mark Powick bringing his Oldsmobile into the staging lanes to race Bob Glidden at the Spring Nationals. Evans. And there's two Chevrolets headed to the starting line. This is the first pair of cars in the semifinal round of Pro Stock Eliminator.
And these are both Chevrolet Berettas. And we caution those of you at home who own a Chevrolet Beretta, do not put the great big slicks on the back, because your Beretta is front-wheel drive. NHRA allows them to make Pro Stock cars rear-wheel drivers, so watch it.
Also, Steve, it's a little tough to find your late model Beretta with a 500 cubic inch thundering V8 under the hood.
But one thing that they do have in common with the street-driven Beretta, and that is the silhouette of the body. It has to conform exactly to the production automobile, with the exception of that scoop and a little bit of the spoiler on the rear.
Joe Lapone Jr. in the far lane. In the near lane, Bruce Allen. Lapone with the lane choice by only 1,000th of a second. Both drivers taking their time about staging their set. A great start. Oh, a close race at the finish line. And Joe Lapone Jr. by just a few inches defeats Bruce Allen. The elapsed time for Lapone, 7.41 seconds. The elapsed time for Allen, 7.41 seconds. This race was won at the starting line by Joe Lapone. By just a few thousandths of a second, Lapone had the advantage off the starting line, and it was impossible for Bruce Allen to make up the difference at the finish line. In one of the closest races of the day, regardless of the category of competition, Joe Lapone held on at the finish line to take the win over Bruce Allen and move into the finals. That's how close it was. By 2,000ths of a second, Joe Lapone Jr. defeated Bruce Allen. At the far end of the racetrack, let's go to Steve with Joe.
You know, I'm starting to feel like a personal win light for Joe Lapone, because every round it's so close you get out and you say, did I win? I got a good answer for you. You bet.
I'm really happy. David and Buddy and Bruce have done an excellent job. They have been running real good with the Chevy, and we're glad to keep company here.
The round before you said, now if I can just drive. Well, you drove beautifully. You won with a slower elapsed time.
That's great. I'm doing my job. The engine builder's doing their job. Now we have to do our job against Bob, and I'm real happy, and I'm glad the fans are real supportive out here.
It's been a long time since you've been in a final, Jose.
Yeah, well, we're ready for it. I've been waiting long enough. Thank you.
It's interesting to note how they keep their emotions under control when they're talking to Steve. And then as Joe Lapone gave you a graphic example, he turns away and you can just see the elation of the victory on the face and hear it from Joe Lapone.
But no driver, David, has been more excited all weekend long than the Buckeye at the wheel of that pro stock car, Mark Powick. He has just about beat the steering wheel off the shaft with every qualifying run and every victory in eliminations. Now he faces, in fact, you're riding with 9-time Winston Pro Stock champ Bob Glidden, and you just saw the dry burnout. How'd it feel?
Felt strong to me. We'll see how Bob Glidden does as he matches width and cars with Mark Powick. Both drivers taking their time coming into the pre-stage light. Staging process conducted by some light beams that go across the starting line. As the wheel rolls forward, it turns on a light at the top of the Christmas tree. That indicates the car is getting close to the actual starting line. Then the driver pulls the car forward just a few inches more. The tree flash is green, and down the track they go. Bob Glidden pulling the levers on that Ford, and he pulls ahead of Mark Powick and takes the win. Bob Glidden moves into another final round appearance, but this time he will not have lane choice. Joe Lapone, in defeating Bruce Allen, had an elapsed time that was 2,000ths of a second quicker than Bob Glidden. Thus, he will pick the lane in the finals of Pro Stock Eliminator. In the funny car pit area, you may think it is a replica of a pipe organ. No, it's just the exhaust headers. On Bruce Larson's funny car, they've disassembled that racing engine to get it ready for the final round race against Tom Hoover, coming up later at the Spring Nationals.
Well, Bob Glidden, a 741, has silenced the enthusiasm of Mark Powick. A nice run. You lost lane choice to Joe Lapone, who hasn't been this hot in a long time.
Joe's really running well here. I don't know what happened in the run between he and Bruce, but, you know, I knew Bruce was going to be hard to beat. Joe's been running well the last couple of races, but, you know, a lot of people can run well and not get to the final round or not win. Joe's going to be a tough one. I can see that right now.
And he's always tough on the starting line when he gets in this kind of a cycle.
He's always been tough against me. I don't know how he is against anyone else, but we're going to have our act together.
Is there more in the Ford Probe?
Something happened on that run. I don't know if I lost a collector and ran over it, but I nearly crossed the center line, and I think we'll get straightened around here.
If anybody can, the 9-time champion can.
The finals coming up next at National Trail Raceway and the 25th annual running of the Budweiser Springnationals. Area, it is obvious there is organized precision work going on, getting his car ready for the Top Fuel final against Hank Hendrick. Earlier, Steve took a look at one of the Spring Nationals' more unique race cars.
Well, David, as you well know, there's over 100 professional cars entered at this event, and they demand most of our camera coverage. But any knowledgeable fan will tell you, if you want to have a good time, explore the pits. Here at Columbus, over 700 Sportsman race cars and trucks. Take a look at this magnificent 1989 Dodge half-ton pickup created by famed Chrysler engine builder Dave Koffel and friends. Look a little narrow to you? Well, they have taken 4 inches right out of the center of the truck. Doesn't push quite as much wind this way. How about the top? Is it chopped? Yeah, you bet it is. Just about 3 inches. Now, Rick Sarmento drives this machine, and he and Dave, they have chopped and channeled and lowered and got it down to just about 2,300 pounds, even though it uses all steel body parts except for the hood. Now, it's powered by one of Koffel's famed 800 horsepower B1 Dodge Wedge engines and runs right on the Supercomp 890 index at a speed well over 150 miles per hour. Is this a serious race machine or what? Okay, David, why don't you tell us how Rick Sarmento did in the Supercomp truck and tell us who won the Sportsman categories here at Columbus.
Steve, unfortunately for Rick Sarmento, he went out in round number 1 of competition. In the finals of Super Comp, it was Johnny Lamoose in the near lane. In the far lane, Danny Bastianelli. An early lead gained by Lamoose paid off at the finish line. He won Super Comp Eliminator. The top alcohol dragster champ, Bill Barney. In top alcohol funny car, Bob Newberry was the winner. Competition Eliminator, Lindley Eisenhood. In Super Stock, Mike Say, the champion. Stock Eliminator, Mark Maxwell. In Super Gas, Ed Hajek. In Super Street, Craig Miller. And the Pro Stock Motorcycle champion, John Mafaro. This is the final of Pro Stock Eliminator, and it is boiled down to that classic battle between factories. Chevrolet, as represented by Joe Lapone Jr. and the Chevy Beretta, against the Ford Probe, driven by the winningest racer of all time, Bob Glidden. The question is often asked, to what extent will a racer go to win a race? Steve Evans stopped by Joe Lapone's pit area to find out what he does.
Bob Glidden, beware, the man that drives this Chevrolet Beretta, Joe Lapone Jr. You see, Joe is using a couple of tricks to get himself psyched up for this thing, motivated. First of all, it's what he calls third-level psychology. He has already pictured himself beating the Ford Probe and in the winner's circle later today, accepting the cheers of the crowd and all the accolades. Then he told me another story. After missing qualifying 4 straight races this year, they rolled into Baton Rouge for the Cajun Nationals, qualified number 2. Boy, they were pumped. Got blown out in round number 1. When the race was over, he and his crew went down to Bourbon Street to kind of drown their sorrows, and he saw this poster in a poster shop, and he bought it and took it home and put it on the wall. Now, it's from that great sports philosopher, Vince Lombardi. You know, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And some other Lombardi-isms were on there. Winning is a full-time job. Some people have heart, some people have talent. If you have both, then winning will come automatically. All these things. Well, Lapone has just been drilling this into his head. And I'll tell you what, there is a guy with a positive attitude. Right, Joe?
I'm on Lombardi time right now.
Vince Lombardi had 11 football players. Joe Lapone has got an aluminum block. 500 cubic inches represented by 8 pistons, 2 cylinder heads, and 2 4-barrel carburetors. They all have to work as a team to put the power to the ground to beat this man, Bob Glidden. Glidden now intently watching the tree. So's Lapone. And it's a red light start for Lapone. Bob Glidden has won his 9th Spring Nationals title. Sons Rusty and Billy are celebrating. Glidden puts out the parachutes with a 7.41 second elapsed time. His speed 185 miles an hour. Bob Glidden 72 times has visited the NHRA winner's circle. Look at the red light by Lapone. He was way early. This second angle in our instant replay graphically demonstrates how far ahead of the green light Joe Lapone was.
Well, Joe Lapone, you might want to add to that Vince Lombardi poster. You can't win if you're red light.
I know. Well,
Bob's been tough all day, and I had to leave. It was my time to go.
Indeed. Bob Glidden, congratulations. A 741, yet another title, and I know this is as special as the first one.
You bet, Steve. I'll tell you, you know how tough it is in pro stock. Joe, I don't know what Joe ran. I'm sure he ran well. He's been running well all day. As a matter of fact, he had lane choice. I was going into the final. People I know are tired of hearing all this bull crap that this race is as good as the last, but they'd have to be in my position to understand and know how tough it is to beat these guys, to beat Al and Johnson and, you know, people like Joe. It is great.
You never get tired, Bubba, things that come from the heart.
Well, you can't get tired of winning. When you get tired of winning, you better quit whatever you're doing. You know, I'm sure I'd get tired of it a lot sooner if we weren't consistently winning, but, you know, drag racing's been really great to us.
You've given us a great show every time out. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
At the rate he's going, Steve, I don't think Bob Glidden's going to get tired of this sport for a long, long time. Look at the points lead he has in the Winston Championship. There's a $100,000 pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Bruce Allen's far back in second place. In Hank Endry's pit area, they've got the engine together. Now they're selecting what size jet to use in the fuel system. Top Fuel Finals coming up later at the Spring Nationals.
To see it set, but if you came here to run quick elapsed times, well, you're glad to see that sun go away, Dave McClellan. This track may be as good as it was yesterday before this thing is over, and the funny car finalists are on the starting line.
As the sun goes down, the track begins to cool off, and the air particularly gets much denser, but yet the traction is still there. For Bruce Larson, that's just what he wants to hear. He's already run a 5:25 today for a new national record. Now he has got the best Tom Hoover if he plans on taking home the Spring Nationals title.
And you saw just a second ago, Bruce Larson moved right up to the starting line. Not so much to put pressure on Tom Hoover. Larson doesn't want to build any more heat in that motor than is absolutely necessary. The hotter it is, the more power it is, the bigger chance you have of overpowering the racetrack.
Both cars leave the starting line together, and then Tom Hoover smokes the tires. And Bruce Larson has captured the Spring Nationals title with a 5.42-second elapsed time, 275 miles an hour. Tom Hoover did everything he could to win this race. As we look again in instant replay, watch Hoover. He gets the advantage at the starting line by nearly 0.06 of a second. But his misfortune set in a few hundred feet down track. That's when the car lost traction, the tire smoke billowing off, the ultimate in burning rubber, allowing Bruce Larson to move by and take the win. For the second time this year, Bruce Larson now has the chance to stop and see Steve Evans.
The horn is blowing for Bruce Larson. Maynard Yanks and the crew jammed into the station wagon, and you deserve all the applause you're going to get, my friend. What a day.
You gonna throw me in the pool? Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
And I'll tell you, and this one came without a lot of parts breakage. Maynard Yanks, the crew chief, is right here to our right. Maynard, great job.
Thank you very much. We went to a whole new clutch program for today, and it really fared out well for us.
What a driver, huh?
About it. He's doing the job all day, too.
And Bruce, more points. You continue to lead now by a bigger margin.
Thanks a lot, Steve. You know, the Century Tax and Gage's Oldsmobile funny car just ran terrific all day.
Absolutely, just like a machine.
These guys are the key to the whole thing.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Congratulations again.
Steve, Bruce Larson certainly made his contribution to the success of this team and the championship here at the Spring Nationals. Combine the win with the points earned by setting a new record, and look, some 1,300 points separating number 1 and 2, Bruce Larson, ahead of Kenny Bernstein. Tied for third, Ed McCulloch and Mark Oswald. Our finalists in Top Fuel, Hank Endrys and Joe Amato, getting set. Schultz with his hand in the air. That is the car owner, Jeff Bernstein, intently watching as his wife, Susan, directs the driver, Hank Endrys, back to the starting line.
And I guarantee you, Bill Schultz is looking at the exhaust headers on that car, as is Susan Bernstein. This machine, as well as its run, Dave, has not run on 8 cylinders all day long. Even Big Daddy Don Garland's a 3-time Winston champ was over there trying to give him a little tune-up. He suggested using a longer reach spark plug, an old trick Don the Snake Perdone uses when you get a pesky cylinder. Well, Endres, Steve, may need all the tricks he can find because he's got to race Joe Amato. He is on a roll. He's already laid away the 4-second car of Gary Ormsby. He himself has run 5:08 in that lane, which he, by the way, had the choice and selected this round.
And then very craftily back the car down again, much like Bruce Larson has done with his car. Remember, they run as a team. Very intelligent drag racing today on the part of the man in the far lane.
Hank Endres has the advantage at the start. But the power is Amato's. 5.12 seconds elapsed. Time his speed over 280 miles an hour. And Joe Amato applauds himself as the car comes to a stop. His wife, Jerry, congratulating the crew. And Joe Amato has won his first Top Fuel title of this season. He, the defending and reigning Winston champ. In the instant replay, you can see the advantage that Hank Endres gained, about 0.02 of a second. That dust that was coming out of the back of the cars, that's the clutch burning off some of the facing, allowing the engine to put the power to the ground without smoking the tires. Amato pulled ahead at the finish and by a car length won the Spring Nationals.
It is bedlam down here, Dave, as you can see. The first doubleheader for the Amato back team. Bruce Larson in funny car, Joe Amato in Top Fuel. I don't know if he's ever going to take his helmet off. Maybe he'll stand on his head again for us. I don't know. Joe Amato with a wonderful 5:12 elapsed time in the final round. Just what it takes to win it without smoking the tires. I'll tell you, it has been really crazy down here, everyone, but a whole lot of fun. Joe Amato frustrated. Seems to have had that Winston championship jinx, but I think you've broken out of it now, champ.
Yeah, monkey buddy, boom, he's gone. We're back.
5:12.
Oh, thank you, Steve. Boy, my guys have been working hard all year. You know, World Championship, you get that monkey on your back. And it takes a lot of teamwork, and you got to stick to it. You got to keep smiling when the chips are down. That's why we got a good team, and I love this, to come back from something. When you're adverse, that's a sign of a true champion, when you can come back and do it.
And what a special treat to look over at that funny car behind you and see the same colors.
Yeah, Bruce Larson in the Century Tax car, and we got the TRW car. All the people of TRW are here. That's you know, this is a dream come true. Always dreamed we'd have the two funny car and the Top Fuel dragsters in the final, and here we did it.
There they are, the champs in Columbus.
Tim Richards owns the win to all this, buddy. He's the guy who helps us out. Come here, Yanks. Yanks is gonna the crew chief of the future. The only trouble with this deal is here he's gonna want too much money. It's bad to keep him down.
It's a shame Joe Amato shows no emotion when he wins. Congratulations to all the champions. Gary Ormsby holding on to his points lead in the number 2 spot. Darrell Gwynn, Dick LaHaye is third. Now Amato has moved up into the number 4 spot. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Columbus. The 1989 NHRA Budweiser Spring Nationals has been brought to you by Firestone. Watch us, we're on the move. And by Fram Bendix Autolite, all quality products of Allied Automotive. And by Quaker State Motor Oil, the big Q stands for quality, always has, always will. Coverage of the NHRA Spring Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports.